My name is Emily Harper, and for 40 years I poured my heart into a marriage built on lies, a life stolen from me in the quiet town of Willow Creek, Virginia. I was once a rising star in the Willow Creek Community Theater, my voice and grace destined to carry me to Broadway, or so I believed. But a scandal I didn't cause ripped that dream away, and I married William Will Carter, a man I thought was paralyzed, saving my life. For decades, I was his caregiver, his cook, his everything, sacrificing my youth to atone for a debt I thought I owed. I scrubbed floors, mended his family's clothes, and swallowed my pride, all while the world outside our small, clapboard house moved on without me. If you're hearing my story and feeling the sting of injustice, don't just sit there, hit that like button, drop a comment about a time you faced betrayal, and subscribe to our channel to follow my journey of redemption. Your support fuels stories like mine, giving voice to those silenced by deceit. It all unraveled on our golden wedding anniversary, a day meant to celebrate love, but instead it shattered my world. I'd planned a quiet dinner setting the table with my mother's old lace cloth, which I'd saved for special occasions. Will, confined to his wheelchair, or so I thought, sat quietly as I lit the candles. The phone rang shrill and urgent. It was Clara Evans, his first love. Her voice trembling through the static, her house was on fire. Before I could process the words, Will leapt from his chair, his legs moving with a strength I'd never seen. He didn't look back as he ran out the door, leaving me frozen, the candlelight flickering on my stunned face. He dashed to save Clara, only to perish in the flames, a hero in her eyes, but a traitor in mine. The man I'd cared for, the man I'd given everything to, had been faking his disability for 40 years. The betrayal cut deeper when the lawyer arrived a week later, his briefcase stuffed with Will's final wishes. I sat in the cramped living room, James, our son, at my side, his jaw tight with resentment. The will was read aloud. Half of Will's assets, our savings, the house, the land, went to James. The other half went to Clara Evans, the woman he'd loved all along. To me, he left a tarnished pocket watch, its face scratched, its hands stuck at midnight. Tucked inside was a note written in his sharp, deliberate scrawl. Our marriage was my atonement. My family's traditions forbid actresses from being part of our legacy. You were my duty, not my love. The words burned into my soul, each syllable confirming the lie I'd lived. I'd been a placeholder, a servant to his guilt, while he reserved his heart for another. I clutched the watch, its cold metal biting into my palm, and stumbled to the courthouse to contest the will. The steps were slick with autumn rain, and I knelt there, my gray hair plastered to my face, shouting for justice. Passers-by whispered their pity, laced with scorn, that actress always causing a scene. James appeared, his face twisted with disgust. You still have the nerve to play the victim, he spat, shoving me to the ground. You'd be nothing if it weren't for Dad and Aunt Clara. Thank God he never legally married you, or Clara wouldn't have stood a chance against a shrew like you. 'Cause trouble again, and I'll send you back to that nowhere farm to die alone, his words sharp as knives sliced through the last of my resolve. The world spun, my chest tightened, and I collapsed, my heart giving out under the weight of 40 years of betrayal. As I lay there, the cold stone against my cheek, I thought of the dreams I'd abandoned. The Willow Creek Community Theater had been my sanctuary, where I'd once dazzled audiences with my portrayal of Juliet, my voice carrying the weight of Shakespeare's words. But Will's family, old money Virginians with rigid traditions, saw actresses as unworthy a stain on their lineage. I'd believed marrying Will was my penance for the accident that crippled him, a car that swerved into our path as we walked home from rehearsal. I was 22, naive, and consumed by guilt. I gave up the stage, my father's pride, and my future to care for him. I wove baskets during lean winters, worked night shifts at the diner, and nursed his parents through their final years, all while he sat in that chair, his eyes distant, dreaming of Clara. With her golden curls and syrupy smile, Clara Evans had been my theater rival. She'd coveted the lead roles, I earned her jealousy, a quiet poison. I later learned Will had written an anonymous letter to the troupe's director accusing me of an affair to secure my parts. The scandal forced my expulsion, leaving Clara to take my place in the spotlight. I'd never suspected Will's hand in it until that note in the watch revealed his truth. He'd orchestrated my downfall to clear the path for her, then trapped me in a marriage of convenience to ease his conscience. And James, raised on his father's lies, saw me as the villain, not the victim. The townsfolk's whispers echoed in my mind as I faded. She's always too dramatic. They judged me for my passion for daring to dream beyond Willow Creek's narrow streets. In the 1980s in Virginia, a woman in the arts was seen as frivolous, unworthy of respect. I'd internalized that shame, believing I deserved my fate. But as my vision darkened, a spark of defiance flickered. If I could live again, I'd make Will regret every lie. I'd reclaim my stage, my voice, my life. The world went black, but the spark didn't die. It grew a promise of something new. When my eyes opened, a warm light faded, and the scent of grease paint and old wood filled my lungs. I was no longer on the courthouse steps, but in the backstage dressing room of the Willow Creek Community Theater, surrounded by costumes and mirrors. Once wrinkled and calloused, my hands were smooth, my reflection showing the face of 22-year-old Emily Harper, my dark hair pinned up for rehearsal. I touched the calendar on the wall, June 15th, 1985, and my heart raced. I'd traveled back 40 years to the day of auditions that would shape my fate. Soft and ethereal voice lingered in my mind. You've suffered enough. Rewrite your fate. It was as if some divine force, moved by my pain, had granted me this second chance. I didn't question it. I seized it, vowing to undo Will's lies and reclaim my dreams. The dressing room buzzed with nervous energy. Young actors adjusted their costumes, reciting lines under their breath. I spotted Will Carter across the room, his lean frame and sharp blue eyes unchanged, leaning on a crutch he didn't need. In my past life, I'd believed his story, a car accident caused by my distraction, left him paralyzed. Out of guilt, I'd married him, abandoning my career. Knowing he'd faked it all, his presence filled me with fury. He caught my gaze, his smile practiced but cold. Emily, you owe me for saving you, he said, his voice low, laced with resentment. You'll never repay that debt in this lifetime. His words, once a chain around my heart, now fueled my resolve. I wouldn't be his pawn again. Today was the audition for Romeo and Juliet. The role of Juliet was a prize I'd won in my past life, but I lost it to scandal. Clara Evans, blonde hair gleaming under the lights, was warming up nearby, her eyes darting to me with barely concealed envy. In my past life, I'd chosen Juliet, dazzling the director but earning Will's sabotage. This time, I made a different choice. When Michael Foster, the troupe's director, called for auditions, I stepped forward and declared, I'll audition for the nurse, not Juliet. The room fell silent. The nurse was a complex, unglamorous role demanding wit and emotional depth. Whispers rippled through the actors, Emily's throwing away the lead, but I stood firm. This role would showcase my versatility, not just my beauty, and keep me out of Clara's crosshairs. Will's face twisted in shock. He hobbled toward me, his crutch a prop in his performance. What are you doing? He hissed. You promised to care for me after the accident. You can't back out now. I met his gaze, my voice steady. Who said I'd marry you? Will, I don't owe you my life. His eyes widened, a mix of panic and disbelief. He'd expected me to crumble, to cling to guilt like I had before. But this Emily was different. I turned away, ignoring his stammered protests, and focused on my audition prep. The nurse's lines, full of humor and heart, felt like a shield, a way to reclaim my voice without competing directly with Clara. As I rehearsed, memories of my past life flooded back, not in repetitive waves, but as sharp, focused lessons. I saw my father, Thomas Harper, a retired school teacher who'd worked overtime to pay for my acting lessons. His pride in me had been my anchor, yet my marriage to Will led to his stroke, his health crumbling under the weight of my choices. I remembered the long nights weaving baskets to support Will's family, the diner shifts that left my hands raw, the whispers of townsfolk who called me that actress with disdain. In 1985, Willow Creek still clung to old values where women in the arts were seen as flighty, unfit for respectable roles like wife or mother. I'd internalized that judgment, letting it define me. I saw it for what it was, a cage I'd no longer accept. Michael Foster approached, his graying hair and kind eyes contrasting with his stern reputation. He said Emily the nurse is a bold choice, adjusting his glasses. It's not the spotlight, but the heart of the play. Why this role? I hesitated, then spoke truthfully. I want to prove I'm more than a pretty face, Michael. I want to tell stories that matter. He nodded, a flicker of respect in his gaze. I later learned Michael had faced his own battles, rumors of favoritism that nearly cost him his job. His support wasn't just professional, it was personal, a shared understanding of being misjudged. Will lingered nearby, his crutch tapping the floor. You're making a mistake, Emily, he said loud enough for others to hear. You brought meatloaf for lunch when I'm fasting for the audition. You trying to jinx me? He tossed his lunchbox at my feet, the clatter drawing eyes. In my past life, I'd apologized, desperate to please him. I picked up the box and handed it back, my voice icy. If you don't get cast, well, it's not my bad luck, it's yours. The room stilled, actors exchanging glances. Clara smirked, sensing an opportunity, but I ignored her. I was done playing the scapegoat. As I walked away, I felt the weight of my past life lifting. The mystical voice that brought me here hadn't promised an easy path, but it clarified me. Will's accident I now knew was no accident. He'd staged it to trap me to clear the way for Clara's rise. The car, the crutch, the guilt, it was all a performance one I'd believed for 40 years. But this time I'd rewrite the script. I'd protect my father, reclaim my stage, and make Will and Clara face the consequences of their lies. The audition loomed, and with it my first step toward a new life. The air in the Willow Creek Community Theater's dressing room was thick with the scent of hairspray and nervous anticipation. Actors milled about, adjusting costumes and murmuring lines, but my focus was razor-sharp, locked on the choice I'd just made. Emily Harper had declared I'd auditioned for the nurse in Romeo and Juliet, not the glamorous Juliet, a role I'd won in my past life, only to lose everything to William Will Carter's lies. At 22, reborn into 1985 by some divine grace, I stood at the crossroads of my fate, determined to rewrite it. Will's blue eyes, sharp with resentment, bored into me from across the room. His crutch a prop in his calculated performance tapped the hardwood floor. As he hobbled closer, his voice low but venomous. "Emily, what are you playing at? You owe me your life after that accident. You can't just walk away." In my past life, his words would have crushed me. I'd believed his story, a car swerving into our path as we walked home from rehearsal, his body shielding mine, leaving him paralyzed. Guilt had driven me to marry him, to abandon my dreams, and serve him for 40 years, only to learn he'd faked it all to trap me while his heart belonged to Clara Evans. Now knowing the truth, his accusations sparked defiance, not shame. I straightened my voice steady as I met his gaze. "Who said I'd marry you? Well, I don't owe you my future." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. His face twisted shock, then panic, as actors nearby paused their whispers, a soft hum. Clara smirked from a corner, her blonde curls catching the light, sensing drama she could exploit. Will leaned closer, his crutch creaking. "He hissed that you promised to take care of me after I saved you. Can you break that vow? I'll tell the director you're unreliable. Everyone will know you're a flake." His threat was a shadow of the manipulation he'd wielded in my past life when he'd forged a letter to frame me for an affair, costing me my place in the troupe. But this time I saw through him. I stepped forward, closing the distance, my voice cold. "Go ahead, Will. Tell them. Let's see who they believe, a man faking a disability, or the woman who's done nothing but work for her place here." His eyes widened, a flicker of fear betraying his facade. He hadn't expected resistance. The memory of my past life's sacrifices fueled my resolve. I'd spent decades scrubbing floors, weaving baskets, and working diner shifts to support Will's family, all while Willow Creek's townsfolk whispered that actresses were loose women unfit for respect. In 1985, Virginia's small-town values still clung to tradition, viewing theater as a hobby, not a calling. Women like me who dared to dream of the stage were judged harshly, our passion mistaken for frivolity. I'd internalized that judgment once, letting it chain me to Will. Now I rejected it. The nurse's role, with its wit and depth, was my chance to prove my talent and show that I was more than the pretty face they expected. The troupe's director, Michael Foster, called my name for the audition. His graying hair and kind eyes hid a steel backbone forged by years of navigating theater politics. I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight warm on my skin, and delivered the nurse's lines with humor and heart, drawing on the pain of my past life to give her depth. The room was silent when I finished, then erupted in applause. Michael nodded, scribbling notes. "Bold choice, Emily. You've got something special." His praise, hard-earned, felt like a lifeline. I later learned Michael had faced his own battles, rumors of favoritism that nearly ended his career. His support wasn't just professional, but a quiet alliance against those who judge us unfairly. Will lingered backstage, his crutch a mocking prop. "You're throwing away Juliet for this," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "You brought meatloaf for lunch when I'm fasting for luck. You're trying to sabotage me." He tossed his lunchbox at my feet, the clatter drawing eyes. In my past life, I'd apologized, desperate to soothe him. I picked it up and handed it back, my voice icy. "If you don't get cast, it's not my meatloaf, Will, it's you." Clara stifled a laugh, but I ignored her. I was done being their pawn. As I walked away, I felt the weight of 40 years lifting. The divine voice that had brought me back echoed faintly. "Rewrite your fate. I would not just for me, but for my father Thomas, whose sacrifices deserved better than my past life's failures. Will's voice followed me, desperate now. Emily, you can't do this. I saved you. You owe me. I turned my eyes hard. You saved yourself, Will, and I'm done paying for it. The room stilled, actors exchanging glances. Clara's smirk faded, sensing the shift. I walked out, the stage lights fading behind me, my heart pounding with a truth I hadn't spoken in my past life. I was free. Will's lies, his crutch, his guilt, they no longer held me. The audition was just the beginning. I'd expose his deception, reclaim my place in the theater, and protect the people I loved. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time it was mine. The sun dipped low over Willow Creek, casting golden light through the oak trees lining our street. I pedaled my old Schwinn bicycle home, the summer air warm against my skin, my heart racing from my confrontation with Will. The small clapboard house where I'd grown up came into view, its porch sagging but familiar. Inside, my father, Thomas Harper, sat at the kitchen table, his reading glasses perched on his nose, a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird in his hands. In my past life, I'd lost him to a stroke, his health broken by my choice to marry Will and abandon my dreams. Now at 22, reborn into 1985, I had a chance to make things right. The divine grace that had brought me back, a voice whispering, "Rewrite your fate," urged me to protect him, to honor the love that had shaped me. I dropped my bike and ran inside, the screen door slamming behind me. Thomas looked up, startled, as I threw my arms around him, tears streaming down my face. "Emily, sweetheart, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice thick with concern. His familiar scent, old books and coffee, grounded me. In my past life, I'd hidden my pain from him, ashamed of my failures. Now I let the tears fall, overwhelmed by the chance to see him healthy again. "Nothing's wrong, Dad," I choked out. "I just missed you." He hugged me back, his calloused hands gentle. "Missed me? I saw you this morning. Did something happen with Will?" His brow furrowed, already sensing trouble. I pulled back, wiping my eyes. "Will's not who I thought, Dad. I'm not marrying him." Thomas's face softened, then hardened with resolve. "Good. I never liked that boy. Too much charm, not enough heart." He paused, setting his book down. "I pushed you too hard to chase your dreams, didn't I? I wanted you to shine, but I should have asked what you wanted." His words hit me like a wave. In my past life, he'd worked overtime as a school teacher to pay for my acting lessons, riding me to rehearsals on his bicycle before dawn. I'd believed I'd let him down by quitting the theater. Now I saw his love, not judgment, in his eyes. We sat at the table, and I opened a Tupperware of homemade meatloaf, the comfort food he'd always loved. As we ate, I shared pieces of my day, careful not to reveal my rebirth. "I chose the nurse for the play, not Juliet," I said. "It's a more challenging role, but it's me." Thomas smiled, his eyes crinkling. "That's my girl. You always had a knack for the real stuff, not just the pretty roles." His pride warmed me, but it also stirred guilt. In my past life, I'd internalized Willow Creek's disdain for actresses, believing I was unworthy of his sacrifices. The town's old money families like Will's saw theater as a scandalous pursuit for women of view that had shaped my shame. Now I rejected it. "Dad, I'm going to make you proud," I vowed, "no matter what they say about actresses." Thomas's eyes glistened. "You already do, Emily, but don't let this town clip your wings. They'll judge you for shining, they always do." His words echoed the social context I'd ignored in my past life. In 1985, Willow Creek clung to conservative values where women were expected to prioritize family over ambition. Actresses especially were seen as reckless, their passion threatening tradition. I'd let that judgment chain me to Will, believing I deserved a life of service. I saw it as a lie I'd dismantle, starting with my career. As we cleared the table, I reflected on my past life's losses. I'd worked night shifts at the diner, woven baskets during lean winters, and cared for Will's parents, all while he sat in his wheelchair dreaming of Clara. My father had watched me fade, his health crumbling as I sank into despair. His stroke, triggered by my choice to marry Will, had left him bedridden, his eyes full of regret on his deathbed. That memory fueled my resolve. I wouldn't let history repeat itself. "Dad," I said, squeezing his hand, "from now on, I'll make every meatloaf you want. No more sacrifices for anyone but us." He chuckled, but his eyes held a quiet hope. A knock at the door broke the moment. Jacob Lee, a local actor and friend, stood there, his lanky frame filling the doorway. "Emily, I heard about your audition," he said, his grin warm. The nurse bold move. I'd later learn Jacob had stayed in Willow Creek to escape a betrayal of his own, a friend who'd stolen his chance at a New York stage. His loyalty to the troupe and to me stemmed from that wound. Will's been talking, he added, his tone darkening. Says you're abandoning him. You okay? I nodded, grateful for his concern. I'm done with his lies, Jacob. I'm starting over. Thomas invited Jacob in and we sat around the table. The warmth of their presence was a stark contrast to Will's cold manipulation. Jacob shared stories of the troupe, his humor easing the tension. Michael Foster's got your back, Emily, he said. He knows talent when he sees it. Michael's support, I realized, came from his own battles with rumors, a shared understanding of being misjudged. As Jacob left, he squeezed my shoulder. You're stronger than you know. Don't let Will drag you down. His words, simple but sincere, anchored me. I'd protect my father, reclaim my stage, and expose Will's deception. The path was daunting, but with Thomas and Jacob by my side, I felt unstoppable. The Willow Creek Community Theater was a hive of activity. Its backstage was cluttered with props and costume racks, and the air was heavy with the scent of sawdust and anticipation. I, Emily Harper, stood in the dim light, my heart pounding with the weight of my second chance. Reborn into 1985 by a divine whisper, rewrite your fate. I was determined to unravel the lies that had stolen my past life. At 22, I'd rejected Will Carter's manipulative guilt, choosing the nurse's role in Romeo and Juliet over the glamorous Juliet to sidestep his schemes. But the truth of his betrayal loomed larger, a puzzle I needed to solve to reclaim my place in the theater. I rummaged through the prop cabinet searching for my audition notes and noticed a crumpled envelope tucked behind a stack of scripts. My name was scrawled on it in Will's sharp handwriting, but the contents weren't mine, a love letter addressed to Director Foster, dripping with false affection. My blood ran cold. This letter had surfaced during auditions in my past life, accusing me of an affair with Michael Foster, the troupe's director. It cost me my role reputation and dreams, forcing my expulsion and paving the way for Clara Evans to take the lead. Holding the forged letter, I realized Will had planted it here, just as he had 40 years ago to sabotage me. I clutched the envelope, my hands trembling with fury. Will's deception wasn't just personal, it was calculated, a betrayal that had chained me to a life of servitude while he secretly loved Clara. In my past life, I'd cared for him, believing his paralysis was my fault, only to learn he'd faked it to trap me. The memory of those years scrubbing floors, working diner shifts, enduring Willow Creek's whispers about actresses being unfit for respectable lives ignited a fire in me. In 1985, this town still clung to its conservative roots, where women in the arts were seen as reckless dreamers, unworthy of trust. I'd let that judgment define me once, but not now. I marched to Michael Foster's office, the letter in hand. His graying hair swept back. Michael looked up from his desk, his eyes kind, but wary. Emily, you look like you've seen a ghost, he said, setting aside his notes. I slid the letter across his desk. This was in the prop cabinet, meant to frame me for an affair with you. It's Will's doing. Michael's brow furrowed as he read, his face darkening. This is low even for him, he muttered. He leaned back, his gaze distant. I've been through this before, Emily. Years ago, someone spread rumors that I favored actors for personal reasons. Nearly lost my job. I won't let this happen to you. His confession, a glimpse into his own battles, deepened my trust. Michael wasn't just a director, but a survivor of Willow Creek's gossip mill who understood the sting of false accusations. What do we do? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside. He tapped the letter. We burn it. No evidence, no scandal, but we need to watch Will. He's desperate to control you. I nodded, and we walked to the backstage stove, its coals glowing red. I tossed the letter in, watching the flames consume it. The ashes symbolized my break from Will's lies. The weight in my chest lifted, but the fight wasn't over. Backstage, Clara Evans flitted about, her blonde curls bouncing as she rehearsed Juliet's lines. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp with envy. She'd benefited from Will's sabotage in my past life, taking my roles while I faded into obscurity. Now I saw her for what she was, a pawn in Will's game, but a willing one. I approached her, keeping my tone calm. Clara, did you know about the letter? Her smile faltered, then hardened. I don't know what you're talking about, Emily, but you're not stealing my spotlight. Her deflection confirmed her complicity. She wasn't innocent, she was ambitious, shaped by a town that rewarded conformity over talent. As I prepared for my audition, I reflected on the broader stakes. Willow Creek's judgment of actresses wasn't just personal, it was systemic, a reflection of a society that demanded women prioritize duty over dreams. In my past life, I'd internalized that shame, believing I deserved my fate. Now I saw it as a lie to dismantle. The nurse's role was my rebellion, a chance to prove my worth through skill, not beauty. Michael called me to the stage, and I poured my pain into the performance, every line a defiance of the town's expectations, every gesture a reclaiming of my voice. The applause was thunderous, and Michael's nod confirmed I'd earned my place. Will lingered nearby, his crutch tapping nervously. "You think you can erase me, Emily?" he whispered, his voice laced with desperation. "I saved you from that car. You owe me." I turned my eyes hard. "You saved yourself, Will, and I'm done paying for your lies." His face paled, but I walked away, the stage lights fading behind me. The burned letter was my first victory, but Will's deception ran deeper. I'd need to expose him fully to protect my future and my father's. The divine whisper that had brought me here echoed faintly, urging me forward. I was rewriting my fate, one truth at a time. The summer sun beat down on Willow Creek's town square, where neighbors gathered for the community theater's open rehearsal, a tradition that drew curious onlookers. Emily Harper, stood at the crowd's edge, my heart racing with purpose. Reborn into 1985, I'd uncovered Will Carter's forged letter meant to ruin me, but his greatest lie, his faked paralysis, still held sway. Today, I'd expose him not with a public spectacle, but with a calculated move to reveal his true nature. The divine voice that had granted me this second chance, "Rewrite your fate," whispered in my mind, a reminder that justice was within reach. I'd enlisted Jacob Lee, a fellow actor and friend, to help. Lanky and quick-witted Jacob had stayed in Willow Creek after a betrayal in New York cost him a shot at Broadway. "I know what it's like to be stabbed in the back," he'd told me over coffee, his eyes shadowed with memory. "If Will's playing you, I'm in." His loyalty, born of shared wounds, made him the perfect ally. We'd devised a plan. Jacob would pose as a doctor, using Will's fear of medical procedures to push him into revealing his mobility. It was risky, but I needed the town to see the truth. The rehearsal was set on a makeshift stage in the square, with actors performing scenes for the crowd. Will sat in his wheelchair, his crutch propped nearby, playing the part of the tragic hero. Radiant as Juliet, Clara Evans glanced at him adoringly, her performance a bid for the town's approval. I watched from the sidelines, my nurse's costume striking but straightforward, my mind focused on the plan. Jacob arrived dressed in a white coat, carrying a medical bag borrowed from the theater's props. "Dr. Lee," he announced, his voice carrying over the chatter. "Here to check on Mr. Carter's condition." The crowd murmured, intrigued by the unexpected drama. Will's face tightened, but he forced a smile. "No need, Doc. I'm fine." Jacob knelt beside him, his expression serious. "Nonsense. The theater's insurance requires a checkup. Let's try some acupuncture, which stimulates blood flow." He pulled out a set of gleaming needles, their tips catching the sunlight. Will's eyes widened, his knuckles white on the wheelchair's arms. In my past life, he'd screamed at the sight of a splinter, his fear of anything medical a weakness I now exploited. "It's just a few pricks," Jacob said, holding a needle close, "unless you're hiding something." The crowd leaned in, sensing tension. My father, Thomas Harper, stood nearby, his face etched with suspicion. In my past life, he'd suffered a stroke after I married Will, his health broken by my choices. I'd protect him by exposing the man who'd deceived us both. Will squirmed, his voice rising. "I said I'm fine. Please don't touch me." Jacob pressed the needle closer, and Will's panic broke. He leapt from the wheelchair, stumbling forward, his legs strong and steady. "I'm not paralyzed," he shouted, his voice raw with fear. The crowd gasped, hands covering mouths, as Will stood exposed, his crutch abandoned on the ground. Thomas stepped forward, his face red with fury. "You lying bastard!" he roared, grabbing a broom from a nearby vendor. "You tricked my daughter, made her think she owed you." He swung the broom, chasing Will through the square as onlookers jeered. "Fraud!" someone yelled. He played us all. Will dodged his agility, damning him further. Clara froze on stage, her face pale, her role as Juliet forgotten. The scene wasn't the public spectacle of my past life's fantasies. No leeches or theatrics, but a raw, undeniable truth. Will's lie, the foundation of his control over me, crumbled before the town. I caught Jacob's eye, and he winked, slipping off the white coat. "Nice work, Emily," he whispered. "He's done." His betrayal in New York had taught him to spot a con, and his help wasn't just tactical, it was personal, a way to reclaim his sense of justice. I turned to Thomas, who was panting the broom still in hand. I should have seen it sooner, he said, his voice thick. I let you down, Emily. I shook my head, touching his arm. You never did, Dad. I'm fixing this for both of us. The crowd's whispers turned to discussions of Willow Creek's values. An actress isn't a sinner, one woman said, her voice loud. Why do we judge them so? In 1985, the town's prejudice against women in the arts ran deep, but this moment cracked that facade. My choice to expose Will wasn't just personal, it challenged the idea that my passion made me less worthy. Still on stage, Clara met my gaze, her eyes a mix of shame and envy. In my past life, she'd thrived on my downfall. Now her silence spoke volumes. She'd known Will's lie, or at least suspected it, and her complicity tied her to his fate. As the crowd dispersed, Michael Foster approached his expression grim but approving. You handled that well, Emily. The troops behind you. His own history with rumors made him a fierce ally against deception. I nodded, my heart lighter. Will's exposure was a victory, but the fight wasn't over. Clara's ambition and Willow Creek's judgment still loomed. The divine whisper echoed faintly, urging me to keep going. I'd reclaimed my truth, but my stage, my father, and my future were still at stake. I was rewriting my fate, and no one would stop me now. The stage lights of the Willow Creek Community Theater glowed warm, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor, as Emily Harper prepared for my first full rehearsal as the nurse in Romeo and Juliet. Reborn into 1985 by a divine whisper. Rewrite your fate. I had exposed William Will Carter's faked paralysis, shattering the lie that had chained me to a life of servitude in my past existence. At 22, I was no longer the naive girl who'd sacrificed her dreams for guilt. The nurse's role, rich with wit and emotional depth, was my chance to prove my worth to the troupe and myself. Willow Creek's summer air hummed with possibility, and I was determined to seize it. My costume, a simple gray dress with a starched apron, felt like armor as I stepped onto the stage. The script in my hands was dog-eared, its lines memorized but alive with new meaning. In my past life, I'd spent 40 years caring for Will, working diner shifts and weaving baskets to support his family, all while the town whispered that actresses were flighty and unworthy of respect. Those years of toil, kneeling to scrub floors, soothing Will's parents in their final days, gave me a well of pain to draw from. I channeled it into the nurse's lines, infusing her humor with a quiet strength, her loyalty to Juliet with a mother's fierce love. When I delivered a monologue about Juliet's childhood, the audience of actors and crew fell silent, their eyes fixed on me. Michael Foster, the troupe's director, clapped slowly as I finished, his graying hair catching the light. Emily, that was raw real. You're not just playing the nurse, you're living her. His praise, hard-earned, warmed me. I later learned Michael had fought his battles against Willow Creek's gossip mill rumors of favoritism nearly costing him his career. His support was more than professional. It was a shared defiance against those judging us unfairly. You've got a gift, he added, his voice low. Don't let anyone take it from you again. His words echoed the divine whisper that had brought me here, urging me to reclaim my place. Backstage, I caught sight of Clara Evans, her blonde curls framing a forced smile as she rehearsed Juliet's lines. She'd thrived on my downfall in my past life, taking the roles Will's sabotage had stolen from me. Now, with Will exposed and recovering in the hospital after his panicked flight from our staged treatment, Clara's visits to him dwindled. Too busy with rehearsals, she told the nurses, but I saw the truth in her eyes. Her loyalty to Will was as shallow as his lies. She approached me, her voice sugary but sharp. Nice performance, Emily. But don't think you're stealing my spotlight. I met her gaze unflinching. I'm not here for your spotlight, Clara. I'm here for mine. Her words stung, but they also clarified my purpose. Willow Creek's conservative values, rooted in 1985 Virginia, cast a shadow over women like me. Actresses were seen as dreamers who neglected proper duties, and their passion marked instability. In my past life, I'd internalized that judgment, believing I deserved my fate as Will's caregiver. Now I rejected it. The nurse's role was my rebellion, a way to show that talent, not conformity, defined my worth. I thought of my father, Thomas Harper, whose overtime as a schoolteacher had funded my lessons. His stroke, triggered by my past choices, haunted me. This time I'd make him proud, not just for me, but for every woman who had been told her dreams were too big. As rehearsals continued, my performance grew stronger, earning nods from the troupe's veterans. Jacob Lee, my friend and ally, watched from the wings, his lanky frame leaning against a prop table. "You're killing it, Emily," he said, his grin genuine. Jacob had stayed in Willow Creek after a New York producer betrayed him, stealing his chance at a bigger stage. His loyalty to me stemmed from that wound, a shared understanding of being undermined. He warned Wills out of the picture, but Clara's still in trouble. She's desperate to keep her crown. I nodded, grateful for his insight. Jacob wasn't just a friend, he was a mirror, reflecting my own fight for redemption. The rehearsal ended, and I biked home under a starlit sky, the town quiet except for the hum of crickets. Thomas greeted me at the door, his eyes bright with pride. "Heard you were a star today," he said, setting out a plate of meatloaf. Michael called. "Said you're the heart of the play." I smiled, my heart full. In my past life, I'd hidden my struggles from him, ashamed of my failures. I shared my triumph, vowing to protect his health and happiness. The stage was my battleground. With every line, I was rewriting my fate, proving that no lie, not Will's, Clara's, or the town's, could dim my light. The Willow Creek Community Theater buzzed with energy as opening night approached, the scent of fresh paint mingling with the nervous chatter of actors. I, Emily Harper, stood backstage, my nurse's costume crisp, my heart steady with purpose. Reborn in 1985, I'd exposed Will Carter's faked paralysis and reclaimed my place in the troupe, my performance as the nurse earning praise that echoed beyond Willow Creek's narrow streets. But Clara Evans, radiant in her Juliet costume, remained a threat, her envy a poison that had fueled my downfall in my past life. Tonight, during our first dress rehearsal, I'd face her on stage and I was ready to shine. Clara approached me in the backstage lounge, holding a bouquet of roses, her smile as false as the prop jewels on her dress. "Will sent these," she said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "He says he sees me as a sister, nothing more. You don't need to worry about him, Emily." I laughed, sharp and cold. "Keep your fairy tales, Clara. Will's lies don't interest me, and neither do you." Her eyes narrowed, but I turned away, focusing on my script. In my past life, Clara had been basking in the roles I had lost, her ambition fed by Will's sabotage. With Will sidelined, she was desperate to maintain her status, and I was her biggest obstacle. On stage, our scene was a fiery clash, the nurse confronting Juliet over her reckless love. I'd trained for years in dynamic roles, practicing stage combat in secret, my delicate appearance belying my strength. As the lights blazed, I delivered my lines with sharp wit, my movements precise. Clara, as Juliet, faltered, her responses stiff. Seizing the moment, I improvised a flourish, a sharp gesture with a prop fan striking just close enough to startle her. The audience, a mix of crew and early guests, gasped, then cheered, mistaking it for choreography. Clara's face flushed, and in panic she grabbed a prop dagger from the set, swinging it wildly. "You're stealing my scene," she hissed, breaking character. I parried with my fan, staying in character, my voice booming. "Foolish girl, you defy your elders." The crowd roared, caught up in the spectacle. Clara's dagger clattered to the stage, her costume askew. Watching from the wings, Michael Foster waved frantically to stop, but the audience's applause drowned him out. I stepped back, bowing slightly, my embroidered apron untouched. Clara stumbled off her face, a mask of fury. Backstage, Michael stormed over, his eyes blazing. "Clara, what was that? You're the lead and you pulled a knife?" "That's a rookie mistake." Clara's voice shook. "She provoked me. Emily's trying to upstage me." Michael turned to me, his expression softening. "Emily, your improv was bold, but stay in the script." I nodded, feigning contrition. "I got carried away, Michael. I'm sorry." But I wasn't. The scene showcased my skill and exposed Clara's weakness. In my past life, her envy had fueled Will's lies, costing me everything. Now I'd turned her ambition against her. Michael demoted her to a minor role, his voice firm. "Clara, you're off, Juliet. We can't risk this again." Clara's face crumpled, a glimpse of vulnerability breaking through. "I just wanted to be enough," she whispered, her words hinting at a deeper wound, parents who'd pushed her into acting to escape their small-town life. The moment stirred a pang of pity, but I pushed it aside. Clara's choices, like Will's, had consequences. Willow Creek's judgment of actresses, rooted in 1985's conservative values, had shaped her too. Her ambition was a desperate bid for approval. I'd faced the same pressure, but refused to let it define me. Jacob Lee approached, his lanky frame leaning against a prop table. "You handled that like a pro," he said, his grin warm. Jacob's betrayal in New York had taught him to spot ambition gone wrong. "Clara's unraveling," he added, "but watch her. She's not done." His warning, born of his own scars, grounded me. As I left the theater biking home under a crescent moon, I thought of my father, Thomas. His sacrifices working overtime to fund my lessons had given me this stage. In my past life, my choice to marry Will had broken his health. Now I'd protect him and myself by proving my worth. The divine whisper echoed faintly, urging me forward. Clara's envy was a hurdle, but I'd cleared it. The stage was mine, and with every performance, I was rewriting my fate, one triumphant step at a time. The Willow Creek Community Theater's backstage was a flurry of activity, the air thick with the scent of grease paint and the hum of pre-show nerves. Opening night for Romeo and Juliet loomed, and I, Emily Harper, stood in my nurse's costume, my heart steady with purpose. Reborn into 1985 by a divine whisper, rewrite your fate. I had exposed William Will Carter's faked paralysis. I outshone Clara Evans in rehearsal, leading to her demotion from Juliet to a minor role. But Clara's envy, a poison that had fueled my downfall in my past life, wasn't finished. She'd strike back tonight, and I was ready to turn her attack against her. As I adjusted my apron, Clara stormed into the backstage lounge, her face flushed, her demoted role as a Capulet servant barely concealing her rage. "You think you've won, Emily?" She spat, her voice low but venomous. "You stole my part, my spotlight. I won't let you get away with it." In my past life, Clara had thrived on my ruin, taking the roles Will's sabotage secured for her, while I slaved as his caregiver. Now her desperation was palpable, her ambition warped by Willow Creek's pressure to prove herself. I met her gaze, calm but unyielding. "I didn't steal anything, Clara. You lost Juliet because you couldn't keep up." Her eyes flashed and she leaned closer, her voice a hiss. "You're not as pure as you act. I saw you sneaking into Michael Foster's office late last night. An unmarried woman alone with the director, I told everyone, and I've got proof." My stomach twisted. In my past life, Will's forged letter had framed me for an affair with Michael, costing me my career. Clara was reviving that lie, using a fabricated log from the theater's visitor records. The accusation stung, not because it was true, but because it echoed Willow Creek's 1985 judgment of actresses. Women in the arts were loose, unworthy of trust. I'd fought that stigma before and wouldn't let it bury me again. The backstage crew gathered, their whispers sharp with curiosity. Michael Foster, his graying hair swept back, stepped in, his face darkening as Clara repeated her claim. "I have the visitor log," she said, holding up a notebook. "It shows Emily was in your office at midnight. Explain that, director." Michael's eyes met mine, a flicker of unease betraying his calm. He'd faced similar rumors years ago, nearly losing his job over false accusations of favoritism. "Clara, you're out of line," he said, his voice firm. "This stops now." Before I could speak, Jacob Lee pushed through the crowd, his lanky frame tense but composed. As the theater's part-time clerk, he'd taken over the visitor log when his father, the regular clerk, went on leave. "Let's see that log," Jacob said, his voice steady. He flipped through it, then looked up, his eyes cold. "Clara, this entry's forged. I was on duty last night, Emily wasn't here. But you asked about Michael's schedule, offering my dad canned peaches to sweeten him up. Care to explain?" Clara's face went pale, her hands trembling. "That's a lie," she stammered. "Your father wrote it." "I saw him." Jacob shook his head, his voice dropping to a steely whisper. "My dad's diabetic, Clara. He doesn't touch sweets, and I'd stake my life on Emily's integrity." His words carried weight born from his betrayal in New York, where a producer stole his chance at a bigger stage. His loyalty to me was personal, a stand against those who'd undermine others for gain. The crew murmured their doubt, shifting to Clara. Michael slammed his hand on a table. "This troupe won't tolerate slander," he declared. "Clara, you're expelled, and I'll ensure every theater in Virginia knows what you've done. You're done here." Clara's world collapsed. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes glistening with tears. "I just wanted to be enough," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My parents said acting was my way out of this town, my chance to be somebody." Her confession revealed a wound raised by demanding parents who saw her talent as their ticket to status. She'd chased the spotlight at any cost. In my past life, she'd succeeded stepping over my ruin. Now her ambition had betrayed her. The crew dispersed, some shaking their heads, others whispering pity. Claire's expulsion wasn't just a punishment, it was a reckoning she'd brought on herself. I approached Michael, my voice soft. "Thank you for believing me." He nodded, his expression weary. "I've been where you are, Emily. Rumors can destroy you. Keep shining, we need you." His support, rooted in his own scars, deepened our bond. Jacob lingered, his grin returning. He teased, "You owe me a coffee for that one," but his eyes held pride. I smiled, grateful for his stand. Willow Creek's judgment of actresses, rooted in its conservative values, had fueled Clara's lie, but it also galvanized me. I'd prove my worth not just for myself, but for every woman who told her dreams were too bold. The stage waited, and I was ready to claim it. The Willow Creek Community Theater was quiet after the chaos of Clara's expulsion, the backstage empty except for the faint hum of a janitor's broom. Emily Harper, sat alone on a prop bench, the weight of the night settling over me like a heavy curtain. Reborn into 1985 by a divine whisper. Rewrite your fate. I'd dismantled Will Carter's lies and turned Clara Evans's slander against her, securing my place in the troupe. But victory felt hollow without understanding why I'd let myself be broken in my past life. The stage lights were dim, casting soft shadows, and in that stillness I faced the truth. I'd avoided my own guilt. In my past life, I'd believed I deserved Will's betrayal. When a car swerved into our path and he saved me, I'd carried the guilt of his supposed paralysis, marrying him to atone. I'd worked diner shifts, cared for his family, and woven baskets through lean winters, all while Willow Creek whispered that actresses were unworthy of respect. I'd internalized that shame, believing my passion for the stage made me less a daughter, less a woman. The town's 1985 values, steeped in conservative tradition, had reinforced that lie, and I'd let it define me. Sitting here now, I saw it clearly. My guilt wasn't for Will's accident, but for abandoning my dreams, for failing my father Thomas, who'd sacrificed so much for me. I closed my eyes, picturing Thomas's face, his crinkled smile, his calloused hands from years of teaching. In my past life, my choice to marry Will had triggered his stroke, his health crumbling as I faded into despair. Now reborn, I'd protected him, exposing Will and reclaiming my stage. But the scars of that past life lingered. I whispered to the empty room, "I'm enough." The words felt foreign but true. I wasn't just rewriting my fate, I was rewriting myself, shedding the shame that had chained me. The divine whisper echoed faintly, a confirmation that this moment, quiet, introspective, was as vital as any stage triumph. Jacob Lee appeared, his lanky frame leaning against the doorframe. "You okay, Emily?" he asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, managing a smile. "Just thinking about who I used to be." He sat beside me, his eyes shadowed. "I get it. Back in New York, I trusted a producer who stole my shot at Broadway. Thought it was my fault for years. You're not that person anymore, Emily. You're fighting for something real." His confession, raw and unguarded, mirrored my own journey. Jacob's loyalty wasn't just friendship, but a shared rebellion against those who'd tried to break us. "You're doing the same," I said. "Staying here, helping me, it's your fight, too." He grinned, a spark of hope in his eyes. "Guess we're both rewriting our stories." The conversation shifted to the troupe. "Michael's talking about you for bigger roles," Jacob said. "You're the heart of this play." Michael Foster, our director, had stood by me through Clara's slander, his history with rumors making him a fierce ally. His faith in me, like Jacob's, was a lifeline. I thought of Willow Creek's broader judgment, its disdain for women in the arts. In 1985, actresses were seen as dreamers who defied proper roles, their ambition threatening tradition. Clara's desperation, driven by her parents' expectations, was a product of that pressure, but so was my past self-doubt. I saw it for what it was, a lie I'd no longer believe. I stood the prop bench creaking and walked to the stage, the empty auditorium stretching before me. I pictured my father's pride, his voice when he'd said, "You're my star." In my past life, I'd hidden my pain from him, ashamed of my failures. Now I'd share my triumphs, ensuring his health and happiness. The stage wasn't just a platform. It was my redemption, a place to prove that passion wasn't a flaw. Jacob followed, his voice light. "You're gonna kill it opening night. Clara's out, Will's gone, you're unstoppable." I smiled, the weight in my chest lifting. The divine whisper urged me forward, and I knew this wasn't just about me. It was about every woman who told her dreams were too much. I'd shine for them, for Thomas, for myself. The moon hung low over Willow Creek, its silver light filtering through the oak trees outside my father's clapboard house. Emily Harper, stood on the porch, the cool night air brushing my skin as I savored the quiet after the storm of opening night. Reborn into 1985 by a divine whisper, rewrite your fate. I had exposed Will Carter's faked paralysis, dismantled Clara Evans's slander, and reclaimed my place in the Willow Creek Community Theater, with a triumphant performance as the nurse in Romeo and Juliet. At 22, I was no longer the naive girl who'd sacrificed her dreams for guilt. But as I leaned against the porch railing, a shadow moved in the darkness, and Will's voice, low and desperate, broke the silence. "Emily, we need to talk." His nearsighted eyes glinted behind his glasses, his face pale from his recent hospital stay after fleeing our staged treatment. In my past life, Will's lies had chained me to 40 years of servitude, his supposed paralysis a debt I paid while he loved Clara. Now, standing before me, he was a ghost of that deception, his crutch gone but his manipulation lingering. "I was wrong," he said, stepping closer, his voice trembling. "I staged the car accident to get rid of you and clear the path for Clara. But I had a moment of guilt, Emily. I couldn't let you die. I loved you even if I didn't show it." His confession hit like a punch, confirming what I'd suspected. In my past life, I'd believed the car that swerved into our path was an accident, his sacrifice my burden. Now the truth burned. He'd orchestrated it to eliminate me as Clara's rival, only to trap me in a marriage of convenience. Fury surged, but I kept my voice steady. "You tried to kill me, Will. Love doesn't do that. You don't get to rewrite your sins now." His eyes widened, pleading. "Give me a chance, Emily. I see you with that actor Jacob. He doesn't deserve you. I'll change, I swear." He reached for my arm, his fingers grazing my sleeve. Instinct took over. I whistled sharply, and 2 stray dogs I'd adopted, retired strays Jacob had found at a local shelter, bounded from the yard. Their growls filled the air as they tackled Will, pinning him to the grass. "Duke Rustyhold," I commanded, my voice firm. The loyal and fierce dogs bared their teeth, their eyes locked on Will. He froze, his face white with terror. "Emily, call them off," he gasped. I stepped closer, my shadow falling over him. "You don't get to beg now. You stole my life, Will. You don't get another chance to ruin it." The dogs growled louder, and I whistled again. "Release." They backed off, but Will stayed down, his breathing ragged. In my past life, I'd internalized Willow Creek's judgment of actresses, believing my passion made me unworthy. That shame had let Will's lies fester. Now, in 1985, I saw through the town's conservative lens. Women in the arts were threats, their ambition a rebellion against proper roles. Will's confession wasn't redemption, but desperation, a final grasp at control. I turned away, ignoring his pleas, and walked inside, the screen door slamming shut. The divine whisper that had brought me here echoed faintly, a reminder that this moment, rejecting Will's manipulation, was a victory over my past. The next morning, Thomas, my father, stepped onto the porch, his eyes narrowing at the torn fabric and bloodstains in the yard. "What happened here?" he asked, his voice gruff. I told him about Will's ambush, his confession, and the dogs. Thomas's face reddened with fury. "That bastard dared show his face here. I'm going to his family's estate and raising hell." He grabbed his coat, but I stopped him, smiling. "Dad, he's already paying. Let it go." Thomas snorted, his anger softening. "Fine, but those dogs deserve a stake." His protectiveness, a contrast to my past life's loss when his stroke left him bedridden, warmed me. I vowed to keep him safe, to honor his sacrifices. Later, Jacob Lee arrived, his lanky frame filling the doorway. "Heard Will took a tumble," he said, his grin wry. Jacob's betrayal in New York had made him a fierce ally, his loyalty rooted in shared scars. "You okay?" he asked, his eyes searching. I nodded. "Better than ever. He's gone, Jacob, for good." His smile widened, a spark of admiration in his gaze. Michael Foster, the troop's director, called later, his voice warm. "Emily, you're the talk of the town. Keep shining." His support, forged by his battles with rumors, strengthened my resolve. Will's defeat was complete, but my fight wasn't over for my stage, my father, and myself. I was rewriting my fate, and no one would stop me. The Willow Creek Community Theater glowed under the autumn sun, its marquee announcing Romeo and Juliet's final performance. I, Emily Harper, stood backstage, my nurse's costume a badge of triumph. Reborn into 1985 by a divine whisper, "Rewrite your fate." I had exposed Will Carter's lies, dismantled Clara Evans's slander, and earned a lead role in a national production set to tour next month. At 22, I was no longer the girl who'd sacrificed her dreams for guilt. The stage was my home, and tonight, as the curtain rose, I felt the weight of my past life lift, replaced by a future I'd forged. The audience roared as I delivered my final lines, the nurse's wit and heart resonating through the theater. Thomas Harper. My father sat in the front row, his eyes shining with pride. In my past life, my choice to marry Will had triggered his stroke, his health crumbling as I faded into despair. Now his robust laughter filled the auditorium, a testament to the life I'd preserved. After the show, he hugged me, his voice thick. "You're my star, Emily. Always were." His words healed wounds I'd carried for decades, a reminder of the love that had anchored me. Backstage, Jacob Lee approached, his lanky frame relaxed, a grin on his face. "You killed it," he said, handing me a coffee. "They're talking about you in Richmond already." Jacob's loyalty, born of his own betrayal in New York, had been my lifeline. Over dinners at our house, we'd grown closer, his humor and warmth hinting at something more. "You sticking around Willow Creek?" he asked, his tone casual but hopeful. I smiled, my heart light for now. "But I'm taking Dad to see the world." Jacob nodded, a spark in his eyes. "Count me in for the ride." His words, simple but sincere, promised a future beyond friendship. Willow Creek's judgment of actresses, rooted in 1985's conservative values, had once defined me. The town saw women in the arts as reckless, their passion threatening tradition. In my past life, I'd believed that lie, letting it chain me to Will. I saw it for what it was, a cage I'd broken free from. Clara's downfall, expelled for her slander, had sparked whispers of change. At the theater, I overheard a young actress say that Emily was proving that we were more than they thought. I vowed to mentor others to ensure no woman faced the barriers I had. My national tour would be more than a performance. It would be a platform to challenge those norms, to show that passion was power. The troupe's director, Michael Foster, joined us backstage, his graying hair catching the light. "Emily, you've put Willow Creek on the map," he said, his voice warm. Michael's battles with rumors had made him a fierce ally, his faith in me a cornerstone of my rise. "You're not just an actress," he added, "you're a force." His words echoed the divine whisper, a confirmation that my journey was bigger than me. I thought of Clara, whose ambition had crumbled under her parents' pressure. Her whispered confession, "I just wanted to be enough," lingered, a reminder that she too was a victim of the town's expectations. I hoped she'd find her own path, but my focus was forward. As I biked home with Thomas, the familiar Schwinn creaking under us, I felt a bittersweet warmth. In my past life, I'd hidden my pain from him, ashamed of my failures. Now I shared my triumphs, his pride a balm for old wounds. We stopped at the town square where the theater's lights glowed in the distance. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "I will keep performing, not just for me but for everyone who loves me. And I'll make sure you live a life full of joy." He squeezed my hand, his eyes glistening. "You already have, Emily." The divine whisper faded, its work done. I'd rewritten my fate not just by defeating Will and Clara, but by embracing my worth. The stage was my beginning, not my end. As we rode home, the stars above Willow Creek felt like a promise, a life of happiness for me, but for Thomas Jacob and every dreamer who dared to shine. I'd fight for that always.